Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates the achievements of women in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharon Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, a boutique search firm based in New York. Each week, I have the privilege of learning from incredible leaders as they share their stories. Together, we celebrate their triumphs, explore their challenges, and uncover their vision for the future of bioscience. Our conversations also provide invaluable insights into how women can unlock their unique superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So, whether you're just starting your journey in bioscience, contemplating your next career move, or simply passionate about science and innovation, this podcast is here to empower, inspire, and guide you. My guest today entered the world of biotech without the traditional science background, but that didn't stop her from making a lasting impact. Starting in clinical research, she quickly recognized the gaps between research sites, CROs, and sponsors, and then set out to bridge them. Her career is a testament to adaptability, determination, and the power of operational expertise in shaping clinical development. Now, as a fractional leader in biotech, she's not only driving innovation, but also mentoring the next generation, helping others navigate a complex and competitive industry. So please welcome my guest today, Suzanne Vyvoda.
Hey, Suzanne.
Morning, Sharon. How are you doing?
I am very well indeed. How are you?
Good, thank you. Happy Friday to you.
Hey, but I've got to be honest though, it seems, I don't know whether it's because we do the podcasts on a Friday, but my God, those Fridays come round very quickly.
Believe it.
Most importantly, what happened to Saturday and Sunday? And then it's like
Oh my goodness, I have no idea.
Monday through Thursday, and then it's Friday again. So, okay,
It's
well,
true.
and where am I speaking to you from? You're over on the West Coast, is that right?
That's correct. I live in San Francisco, actually. So the Bay Area.
Okay. And regular listeners to this show will know I'm absolutely obsessed with what the weather's like wherever, because, you know, being British, that's what we do. We don't talk about the weather. Indulge me. What's the weather like in San Francisco at the moment?
It's actually very similar to London. My husband's from London, so we spend quite a bit of time there, and you see a lot of fog and rain, but today it's actually bright and sunny. Chilly, but it's sunny outside.
Yeah, I've got bright sunshine here in New York, but it's freezing.
I do not envy the cold that you're experiencing right now.
So I've followed your career. Gosh, you've done so much. How did it all start for you? Did you pick the field? Did it pick you? How did you get involved in this world of bioscience?
Great question. So, when I went to college, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. But, in my world and my family, college was the next step after high school. And it was sort of a mentality of get there and you'll figure it out. So at the time I was living in Salt Lake City, Utah, and there's a big university hospital that has a huge cancer center. My mother was a nurse there. My stepfather was a nurse practitioner. And they said, well, that might be a good place to start. And so I got a job at the hospital working for a physician who was an MD, PhD, and really involved in research. His own lab research, industry research, and everything in between. And, he handed me a bunch of protocols and said, go open these with the IRB. And I don't know what a protocol is. I don't know what an IRB is, but I'm good at solving problems. And I found a lot of joy in figuring out how that all worked, how to work with the hospital system in order to kind of enact these clinical research protocols at the site level. And that, was like a thread to pull. We have that thread on a sweater, we pull it and we pull it, and it just unearthed this whole career. All of a sudden I was interacting with patients and with CRAs and sponsors and CROs and the IRB. And I sort of unearthed this whole kind of infrastructure of opportunity that I didn't really know was there. And I liked it because it was medicine, it was science, but it was also understanding patient care, understanding regulations, understanding budgets and contracts. And I felt so intrigued by all of the facets of it. And I also felt like no matter what I thought I learned, there was something immediately to unearth. I couldn't learn it all. So I quickly got deeply involved in the clinical trials office there, moved over to the cancer hospital. And there, I was so struck by the patient interactions that I have. I mean, I think we often talk in this industry about how patient care and really moving the needle for patients, that should be our North Star. Well, in my case, I sat in the office with patients. I walked through consent forms with patients. I learned how to draw blood, take EKGs from patients, and really was a really good exposure to what that patient experience is like. But I also learned that it seemed on the industry side of things that there weren't folks like me writing the protocols. I found a lot of the protocols, the study manuals, to be really cumbersome. And I really quickly discovered, gosh, I want to sit in the room where the folks are writing these protocols, because I bet they don't have someone like me that's helping with that, thinking through the logistics, the operations of what's really feasible at a clinical trial site. So that's really where it all started. And from there, I just knew I wanted to get on the sponsor side of things. I wanted to sit at the pharma company, at the biotech, and I became really passionate about chasing that goal. So I moved up, in the site world. I kind of got where I thought I could get there. And of course, I'm still in Salt Lake City, which is not necessarily a hub for biotech.
But not the metropolis for biotech, is it?
No, not exactly. Not exactly. But at that point, I joined a small CRO for a period of time, and that was a pivot point out of the site. And then I was really able to start pursuing sponsor roles, really by demonstrating that the skills I had learned at the site, at a CRO, were transferable into a biotech company. And I was really able, I think, to see how what I was doing at the site or CRO would flip and impact the sponsor, and how I could bring a lot of value to a sponsor by really understanding those other two sides of the triangle. I always think of it like a triangle. There's sites, there's CROs and specialty vendors, and then there's sponsors. And all three sides really need to work together, to have a successful clinical development program.
And just out of interest, what was your degree in? What did you actually study at college?
Yeah, a great point. I studied sociology and economics. That wasn't remotely related. And I took a lot of science because, again, those were sort of things that were of interest and familiar, but I wasn't pre-med. I liked that. I liked medicine. I liked pharmacology. I liked biology, and I liked all those things. But because I knew I wasn't pre-med, I didn't really know how that would translate at that point to being part of a career. So I really kind of knit the pieces together of a whole bunch of different courses. And people kept telling me, take what you like. And at the end of the day, that's sort of where I landed. And I thought, I'll go back to graduate school at some point once I really figure out what I want to do. And at the end of the day, I found this path, and I found this, there were stepping stones that I could see. I could start to see how a career could really develop out of that. And I got so inspired by what I could potentially accomplish there. Those intentions, I'll look at that next year. I'll think about that later. And, I just never returned to my education because I learned that so much of what we do in biotech is based on skills we learn on the job, things that people are willing to teach us. So things we're just willing to jump in and figure out for ourselves. And I'm really excited by the fact that there are now starting to be degree programs, master's degree programs, and things like regulatory affairs, biotechnology, in a lot of different cases. And I love that. But that wasn't something that we had when I was in college.
Right. And as you kind of grew, because obviously following your path and your career as it's grown and your roles have grown, and you're now very much part of the leadership teams in companies. Who Who helped you going up? Because it's not an easy path, but you didn't do a doctorate. You haven't got a PhD in molecular whatever that you need. That it appears that you need to have. Did you have mentors? Did you have people that kind of told you the path to go, or did you just feel it?
There's a couple of things here. My roles have been very operational in nature. And I think you'd be surprised when you look at those operational roles, you have folks that are technical, that are nurses, that are PhDs, that are MDs, that come from other countries and land there for a variety of different reasons. But I've also seen history majors, English majors, poli-sci majors, folks that wanted to go to med school, but then it didn't feel like the right fit. What I love about our industry is you have this mix of just about everyone. And I felt like that, I related to that. But at the same time, I think one thing early in my career that I found really tricky was once I said, I want to work for the sponsor, I want to be in industry. There weren't a lot of ways to navigate how to get there. And I had a lot of people tell me, that's not going to happen. You're great, but you're a site person, or you're great, but CRO folks don't go to work at the sponsor. It was really it was not an encouraged transition at that point in time. We're going back close to 20 years, 15 years ago, where, unless you could get into one of those CRA training programs, or you could get a job immediately at a sponsor if you were at the right place at the right time. But if you didn't start there, it was really hard to move there. But I decided that wasn't, I was going to figure it out. And I decided that I was so passionate about making that transition that I would figure out how to crack that door. And honestly, Sharon, once I got in there, I found some absolutely incredible people. I've had some wonderful, both male and female mentors who have been so critical along the way to kind of help me navigate this career path. There was a time, Sharon, when I thought, if I could just make VP, I would be so proud of what I'd accomplished. I'm good with that. If I can do that before I retire, I'm good with that. Because there was a time when that just felt so far beyond, what I could visualize.
Yeah.
That felt like the pinnacle. And then I got there and I admit I've had, I think we talk about mentors in a lot of different ways. We have mentors, but sometimes we also have sponsors, and sponsors are those people who are really going to kind of help facilitate that growth from one role to the next. And I think that I had a few really critical sponsors along the way in different roles who really saw potential in me and helped me kind of uncover that. But it wasn't really until I got onto the industry side that I found those people who believed in me, who saw something in me, who helped connect me with other people, who taught me things. And so one of the things I'm passionate about, one of the things I get a lot on LinkedIn, for example, or through my network is requests from young people saying, I'm at a site, I'm at a CRO, or I want to be in clinical research. What do I do? And because no one really helped me navigate some of those early pieces or didn't know how to, I'm really passionate about trying to help to the extent that I can help folks navigate it, because I would have loved more of that. Now, I got really lucky. I landed in a great place. I moved out to the Bay Area, actually completely on my own without knowing a soul. And I found my home here. I found my people here. And I've had some really great success out here. But I really, I try to pay it forward towards those that are still trying to figure it out.
Just the fact that you've done it, no matter what field you're in, it's not until you're faced with somebody that you can identify with as that person was once where I am now, and they are where I want to be. So they can get there. That means so can I. Sometimes that's just enough, right?
100%. And actually, that's a huge component, I think, where I am right now. I'm lucky to look up to so many successful female leaders, female founders, female investors. I think you've done an amazing job at bringing some of those folks onto your podcast. There are so many women now, or more women than there once were, that are taking these leadership roles. And for me, that gives me a glance into maybe what my future could look like, or that wouldn't have been on my radar initially.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, the women I've met are incredible. And I'm so proud to do this podcast and shine a light on both women that have been there, seen it, done it, read the book, seen the film, and can be inspirational to other people. But the one thing that's really blown me away is how much younger people are and pushing that, you know, I mean, I never ask because I just think it's rude to do so, but I'm pretty sure that some of these CEOs, I've got t-shirts that are older than they are, you know what I mean? But they are so passionate and almost have this air about them of that they can do anything, which is great. And I think the more that women bound together and can show that strength and that unity, what was seen 20 years ago as not being possible is possible now. Imagine what the next 20 years can look like. Although I hope to God it doesn't take that long to
yes. That's
I don't think the podcast
very,
will be
true.
running at that point.
You'll have to figure out who your succession plan is. But it's such a good point, though. Love how women, there's two different directions we can take. I really love these folks who are choosing to rise into these roles and to lift other women up. You know, women, I think traditionally, there's almost a competition between us because we know there's so few of us in leadership roles. And I think as a result, there are some women out there who just think, you know, gosh, I've just got to do this for me. And I've got to, you know, plow the field kind of as I go. But I'm so inspired by the women who are choosing, you know, to rise to these leadership roles and to look behind them and see who is coming up behind them. You know, succession planning is important regardless of whether it be in one role, in one company, but really helping to help those next generation of leaders, to lift them up, to help them get a seat in the room. I think we really need to continue to pay it forward to the next generation in order to facilitate that. You know, if we don't enable women to get in the room, to get on the C-suite, to get in the boardroom, you know, to rise into more senior leadership roles, it's going to continue to be hard to navigate. I love being a champion for other women, and I so much respect the other women who really choose to champion women.
Yeah. I think that sadly, there is a generation, and I do think it's a generational thing, which is probably in my generation of people that really, those women who did make it really had to fight tooth and nail to do so, almost become mini masculine to do it, which is awful, but I don't knock it for what people had to do. And I know there's been some air of, well, I had to fight to make it happen. So should you. You know, I'm not going to give you a lift up because nobody gave me a lift up. So you have to fight. And I think the women that experience that are the women that are the ones really championing people coming forward, because they're like, yeah, okay, kudos to you that you had to do it all by yourself, but I don't have to, and I'm going to help other people come through. And also, I think you'll be able to tell me more than this. I know from my own business, my clients and my prospect clients are all kind of small, emerging companies, those really, and, you know, it's no secret, they've struggled over the last couple of years and could potentially continue to struggle. And I'm hearing lots about this fractional recruiting, and it's really gaining momentum that I see as giving not just women, but people in general, that opportunity to share their knowledge and their experience with companies that just aren't at that stage yet you know, to do that. And I've seen from your brief conversations that we've had, as well as your profile, that's something very important to you. You actively seek out these kind of fractional roles. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true, Sharon. And I think what happened in my case was I was part of a company called Telavant. And that was a really exciting opportunity. Telavant was part of the Roivant family of companies, and it sold to Roche in an acquisition at the end of 2023. Gosh, these are the problems We love to see acquisitions in biotech. We love to see exits. I certainly was so excited to be part of that. But at the same time, it left me loose in an environment that was really, really competitive, really tricky. We were seeing so many reductions in force, program cancellations, fundraising issues the past couple of years. And it left me in an environment where finding a full-time leadership role wasn't something that, it's just not been easy to do lately. And so, I took an opportunistic, take at this and said, well, okay, what can I do? And I knew some folks through my network that, needed some help with various projects. And those fractional roles, those consulting roles are interesting where maybe they'll raise money. Maybe that'll turn into a full-time role, but that's not necessarily the case. And so I've had the opportunity, I think, to take an exit and pivot my career a little bit in response to the market and really help some of these younger seed stage companies think things through. Yeah. And I've leaned into that because, frankly, I think the market still feels a little tricky. I think people are still struggling to raise money, although we've had some really big successful deals towards the end of last year into this year. Companies are also a little hesitant to hire expensive talent because they're expensive. You get the wrong fit and you've got a problem. There's no guarantee fundraising will come through the way that we hope it will for every single company. So these fractional roles give, I think, advantages for both candidates and advantages for companies. For companies, they get to bring on a couple different pieces of really key roles. Maybe you don't need a CFO full time, but you need someone at a pretty senior level who can help navigate that piece. Maybe you need someone in clinical development, clinical operations. Maybe you don't need a COO quite yet, but maybe you do need someone who can help come in and think through your asset strategy, your operational strategy, the timelines and budgets required for clinical trials you may run. And so maybe bringing in a bunch of folks on a fractional basis or on a consulting basis that, you're cobbling together that skill set. You're also kind of allowed to try before you buy. Is that someone you like working with? Is that someone who will fit your vision? Is that someone you want to put in front of investors? Is that someone who, is going to mesh well with the future of the company? Sometimes you find someone great, sometimes you don't. Sometimes that fundraising doesn't come through. And I think on the candidate side, there are also advantages. Perhaps you have a couple of different projects. You're able to try on a couple different hats to see what's going to be the right fit for you. What science are you most inspired by? Or what story has the best probability of success? And I'm seeing a lot more of this. I'm seeing recruiters tell me that this is much more palatable to a lot of companies. I'm hearing from more leaders who are doing this type of work, either because they've wanted to kind of step out of that FTE world or because they exited for whatever reason and they have found this environment that's just really, really difficult to navigate if you're looking for a leadership role. I've been really pleased to see that our market is rebounding in some ways. I'm seeing more entry-level roles, manager and director level roles, and that's wonderful. But when we get to that VP, SVP, C-suite, there are very few roles. But, I am seeing more and more of this interest in fractional employees. There are more organizations, I think, that are focusing on placing those types of employees and really getting in front of companies and saying, hey, maybe you can't pick one expensive leader, but if you use fractional team members, you could have consultants that really have a myriad of different expertise, experience that could really bring a lot of value to the company. A lot of times with these small companies, you see, all right, well, there's 3 or 5 of us that are getting together and here's our expertise, but goodness, here are the holes that we have. So we go and we hire consultants, but just that core team of executives may be incredibly expensive for the company. And you think about a founder who's licensing an asset or has an asset, has science, has something that they're going to pitch. They probably do need someone on the medical side to help. They need someone on the operations side to help. They need to think through the preclinical strategy, the CMC strategy, et cetera, regulatory, but they don't necessarily need all of those people at 100% right out of the gates.
I think one of the downsides, people that I've been speaking to on the downside of it is, well, we don't just want to go and get a consultant who may have the skills and can do the job, but they don't fit us. They're not us. So, to actually look at treating it much more about as if you were hiring a full-time person, but not, but that person really does fit the culture, and integrates, assimilates, I think is the word I'm looking
100%.
for, into the organization. And it was interesting because it was towards the end of last year, and it was an online day, and it was mainly investors talking about 2025, what it looks like and what it's going to look like. And the continuous message throughout from each investor was, if you're a small company, don't start thinking about putting a permanent team together, because you could hire a CMO, a COO, a CFO, whatever, for what that business needs right now, here and now. And then, but in a year's time, your business could look completely different. And you don't need somebody 50 weeks of the year, at 40 hours a week when you're just starting up. But you do need somebody who is going to reflect the culture of the company, who's going to reflect your vision and everything else. So there was a lot of talk around the table with these investors about, hiring fractional recruiters. And I've been in recruitment 45 years, and I've never heard this term before. So it's been something since the beginning of the year that I've really kind of looked at to say, okay, how can my real life business that unfortunately isn't making podcasts, I wish it was, but there's no money in that. How can I, as a recruiter, support both candidates and clients in bringing these things together for what the market, being able to adapt for what the market wants? And this seems to be a route, particularly for senior level candidates, because those are, that's really been an impact for me in noticing people who, quite frankly, 3 years ago, I would have had companies bashing my door down to hire them. And these are people that have never been in this situation before. The last time, if you think 2007, 2008 was probably the last time there was a really down time, right?
Like that.
Now, what's that, 15 something years ago? And people weren't, there's people who've been in leadership roles since 2010, maybe, never needed to look outside. And so this whole market area has been a real shock. And I think the more that this can be looked at, the more it will help candidates get rid of that stigma also that I know there has been in the past. They've not really been anywhere very long. Well, that's the market,
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's what that needed for that area. But look at the experience, look at the knowledge, look at the, let's flip the coin and not see somebody being in different places as a negative. It's actually very much a positive. So it's interesting what you say about it. And you've really been an integral part of the companies that you've been involved in and still are, right?
Yes. And I've been happy to do that. And as a result, I think I have found companies that are a great fit for me and companies maybe that aren't the best fit for me. But I've had a chance to kind of look under the hood and see. I've been able to expand my network. And frankly, I've always been that person who'd rather have a full-time role. I'd rather be fully engaged in a company. But the reality is exactly what you said. That's kind of what the market is bearing right now. And just like companies are having to pivot towards different models and different ways of thinking, candidates also need to do the same. There's always going to be full-time roles out there, and that's great. And I think the market will continue to evolve as it has. But I think what I've learned is you need to embrace the need that's out there. You need to position yourself in a way that's going to be compelling for someone who's hiring. And that person may want a traditional FTE, but they may be a little risk adverse to taking one on in these types of situations where there's so many unknowns and there's so much risk associated with building out a small company. Whereas, again, a few years ago, everyone would have been banging down everyone's doors. I was lucky for quite some time to not have to look for a role. I was recruited to one thing, then to another. And that was amazing, but that's just not the market that we're in. So we're having to really reskill ourselves towards a different type of employment. And I, for one, am trying to embrace that because I'd like to make sure, that things continue to move forward for me, for the folks that I know, for the teams that I've worked with. And I want to help the environment continue to succeed regardless of what package that comes in.
Yeah. And I think, company, no matter how small it is, still needs those solid foundations. And those fractional roles can ensure that the foundations are solid. Even if that person chooses that, they're going to take something else or they don't want to stay with that, their job has been to ensure that the foundations are solid for the company to build on. I think that's probably more topics about fractional recruitment are going to be coming over the next few months, particularly when nobody knows what on earth is going on right now. So
very true.
Let's be as flexible as we possibly can to take from them.
Absolutely.
So something else that you've just joined an advisory board.
Yes, I have. I think one thing that in clinical development we struggle with is technology. You always hear out there that clinical development is 10, 15 plus years behind from a technology perspective. And to be honest, we're not technologists, we're not engineers, we're researchers, we're doctors, we're operations folks, we work in a really highly regulated industry. So we have the FDA, we have international regulatory bodies where we have to, complete work that's going to be part of a submission towards those regulatory bodies, ideally when we look towards commercializing a product. The company that I've joined as an advisor is one of these companies that are really trying to develop some clinical trial technology that will build in efficiencies in the way that business is done. I think they have a lot of great ideas. I think they are deeply in that product development stage. But I've joined them because I've been able to provide them some background in terms of what sites do, what CROs do, what sponsors do, how those pieces fit together, and maybe where some of the pain points are. And I know all of us in the industry see those pain points regardless of what hat we wear. We wear a site hat, we pain points interacting with CROs and sponsors and workload and so much manual operational work that we do. We see pain points in CROs with folks still traveling a ton and having to do a lot of manual work, looking at data between one source and another. There's so much that's done on spreadsheets still, regardless of where you are. And the larger the organization there is, tech they usually have, often it's homegrown. And when I tell people what I do for a living, I work in clinical development, I work in clinical operations, I manage clinical trials, they think, oh my gosh, we must be at the cutting edge of technology. The reality is we're not. And I'm passionate about some of these companies that are really coming in and trying to think creatively about how to meet the regulatory requirements, but also build in efficiencies that will make the industry more efficient, more cost effective. And so I hope to continue doing some more of this work.
And is that two little word of AI that's going to be very involved in that?
I think that's a big component of it. Yes, I think we're all trying to figure out how AI will fit into a number of different things. We're talking about it in the preclinical discovery space. We're talking about it in the data analytics space. We're talking about it in the operational space. How can we make things cleaner, more efficient, more effective with AI? And I think most of us that are working in the industry are still kind of trying to figure out where it's going, what AI is, what can it do? I admit that's not my area of expertise. I know ChatGPT, but I don't necessarily know what AI is capable of. And I'm learning more about it every day. But I think the reality is it's going to come in and disrupt, and I hate to use such a cliche word, but disrupt this industry just like it's doing with others. So I'm really excited to see, from a technology perspective, how it's going to impact all sides of this industry. How will sites use it? How will CROs use it? How will sponsors use it? And how will it change the way we conduct clinical research?
And I've spoken to a number of people via the podcast on this, and I think that the underlying thing is, can we trust the data? It's people wanting to be able to see,
absolutely,
we can cut this, you can get this data, etc., in a third of the time, but can we trust it? It's that kind of,
absolutely.
And I think that's where the uncertainty is. We've had a fascinating conversation, and I know that you've got things to get on with and do. Before I let you go, what advice would you give to somebody who perhaps is, a young Suzanne? I don't really know where they want to, got to go to college because you've got to do it, but I don't really know. But what is this clinical thing all about? What advice would you give to somebody who's thinking through those things right now?
Sure. I think I'm glad that there's more visibility out there to what this industry is or can be. I think it's a career path that you can go down regardless of what your background is. And I think that's one thing that we don't see in a lot of career paths. If you need to be an engineer, you're an engineer. If you're a lawyer, you need to be a lawyer. But the advantage of different paths in clinical operations or in clinical development, and not all of them, in biostats, we see folks that have that background, MDs, PhDs, discovery, medical folks that are supporting clinical development. It's not the case across the board. But what I have found is in operational roles, people come from so many different backgrounds, and it's about networking and kind of building that network of folks that know the space, that have navigated the space. Often it's taking an entry-level role and going in and crushing it and building on it. I think transferable skills are becoming more and more important, from site to CRO to vendor to sponsor, and really being able to understand how the industry works, not just from the seat that you sit in, but how would that impact the overall trial, and being able to think about it kind of from that more global perspective. And I would encourage people to keep at it. It can be a tough nut to crack. This is a really tough job market. We've talked about that a little bit. If executives, if leaders are having a hard time getting roles, that has a trickle-down effect to really everyone in the industry, because we have so many folks that have been displaced from different roles.
Yeah.
I would encourage folks not to be discouraged by that. I'm seeing a lot more entry-level roles being posted. I'm seeing folks making moves. I would encourage folks to continue to network, continue to learn more about the space, and just not to give up. Sometimes it takes some doing, and if you keep at it, I think that folks really can accomplish anything they put their mind to in this field.
Yeah, and don't give up on the industry. There's still
absolutely.
I mean, from my own experience, I've seen sectors in the last 40 odd years that what goes down comes back up again. It might be in a different guise, and it may have had to pivot and change, but it always comes through in the end. We just need to believe.
Exactly.
I believe, Suzanne. I have to. I haven't got any choice.
I do too, Sharon.
Well, listen, I really appreciate the time you've given me today.
My
thank
pleasure.
you so much. I wish you every success. I love seeing your posts and what you're up to and what's going on. And maybe if I'm over in San Francisco, or the next time you may be over in New York way, then let's definitely meet up and share more than a cup of coffee.
Sounds lovely, Sharon. Absolutely. I look forward to keeping in touch with you. I've loved following your podcast. Thank you for inviting me to be part of it. Such a great audience and just a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
My pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
That wraps up today's episode of She Leads Biotech. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and found inspiration in the stories shared. Remember, the success of every woman can inspire another, so don't hesitate to share yours. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm specializing in sourcing talent for small and emerging bioscience companies across the US, from our headquarters in New York. For more information about our services, feel free to reach out at contact@cnaint.com. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And until next time, stay bold, stay brilliant, and continue pioneering progress for women in bioscience.